In this video, I want to talk about three main reasons why a task might feel impossible to start. Number one is that the task can feel too large or overwhelming. What happens here is when we think something is too large or overwhelming, this can trigger the nervous system to go into a type of freeze response. So we have the fight or flight, we have the rest and digest, and we also have a freeze response. So with that freeze response, we really can't initiate movement, we can't initiate activation, we can't basically get started on the task. So if we get stuck in that mode, the task will seem too daunting, overwhelming, and then our nervous system literally can't activate. And so we kind of get stuck in that process of overwhelm. So there's a couple things that can definitely help out with this and getting you out of that state. So one of those things is to chunk the task down into smaller or even very micro-sized steps. So by doing so, you're chunking that down because a lot of times overwhelm is also a result of the brain thinking about and trying to do too much at the same time, right? The brain can only do one thing at a certain period of time, so at a certain point in time. So when you chunk the task down into small or even very, very small pieces, like the next logical step to do, that can enable the brain to start to focus. And when the brain can focus on one task, that seems a lot more doable. The other thing that does is that increases the confidence as well, because when we chunk the task down, so into, let's say, one big task into 10 or even 20 very small steps, that process can increase our confidence that the overall task can get done. What happens is that the brain can now see a clear path of execution, whereas before it was just trying to do everything at one time, didn't really see a clear path of that big task getting done, and so we kind of freeze and overwhelm. So what happens is if you chunk the task down properly, the brain can then see, oh, I just do this one and then this next step and this step, and so you can keep doing that in sequential order. And then by actually visualizing that could be another very helpful thing that can help the brain to focus on one thing after another to get the task done. Another tip is to set a timer for as little as 5 or 10 minutes to just give you time to get started on the task. So sometimes getting that timer going enables the brain to kind of relax. So you're only going to be working on the task for, let's say, 5 minutes or 10 minutes. When you do that, you kind of get rid of some of that overwhelm and, give the brain a little bit of a break. So it knows that you're only going to have to work on it for 5 minutes, right? So no big deal. Let's just get started. And then usually after that 5 minutes takes place, sometimes you end up working a lot longer on the task. The most difficult thing was to just get started. So that tip has helped me personally and many of my patients as well. The second reason that I want to talk about is fear of failure. So this is a big one that comes up very commonly in a lot of people, and so it can definitely come up when the task feels overwhelming or that there's too big of a task to do and you're not really sure that you can do it. You're not sure that you can be up for the task, and so we have that fear of failure creep in. So chunking the task down into those micro-sized steps can also be very helpful for reducing the fear of failure, because now you're increasing the confidence that the task can get done due to the brain's ability to see it being able to be carried out in a logical way. Also, visualizing yourself successfully completing each of those micro steps that you set out can be very helpful for reprogramming the brain. So when we have a fear response, that's usually a habitual response. So we encounter a large task, an overwhelming task, then our brain usually goes into autopilot and just generates the fear response. So we need to get out of that. And so visualizing yourself successfully going through those steps can be very, very helpful. So it really helps to get into a nice and relaxed state before you do this. because a lot of times that fear response will cause us to tense up physically and also mentally too. So we're less flexible, we're less able to think clearly when we have that fear response. So to get rid of that, we need to first map out the steps of the task or of that goal that we want to accomplish. And then we want to relax and then visualize. So close your eyes and visualize yourself successfully going through. What would that feel like? What would that be like? And just visualize that process taking place and you successfully completing those. It's just like actually doing it in real life. You can do it kind of on fast forward in your brain, just quickly go through the process of doing that, of completing those micro steps in your head. That will then help to lay down new neural pathways over time. So if you do this enough times, you're then going to stop automatically getting into that fear response and then having a more productive response to an overwhelming task. And the third reason is sensory overload. So a lot of people are very sensitive to different stimuli in the environment. So what I mean by that is, different distractions. People are not able to filter out very well. So especially people with ADHD or other mental health conditions can have a tremendously difficult time filtering out distraction. So it's very important that before you sit down to try to do this overwhelming task, to clean up the environment and get it as distraction free as possible. So having a clean desk to work with, very important. Collecting all the materials that you might need, pencils, paper, whatever you need to actually accomplish the task, so that you're not having to get up in the middle of doing the task and then collect different materials that you might need, get distracted doing that. So collecting everything that you might need is very helpful. And also the last step that I mentioned, mapping it out into those micro steps, you'll be able to foresee what you're going to need to accomplish this project. Also, electronics can be very, very distracting. So they've done multiple studies on distraction and electronics, and so it takes people roughly 20 minutes on average to get back into the state of focus after getting distracted from a notification or something popping up that takes their focus away. So putting the phone on do not disturb or airplane mode can be very effective, and then also just setting a timer too. So this is a little bit different than setting a timer for 5 or 10 minutes to just get started on the task. Once you're already started, or if you are feeling more motivated to get started and you don't need that small timer to get started, setting a timer for 25, 30 minutes, even longer if you can, that can be very helpful as well for your brain to know that the end is coming, right? You know that you're only going to have to work for a certain period of time. That can allow the brain to just shut off in terms of the external environment. So all that other stuff, that you're going to be alerted when the time's up. You don't have to, think about, I might, just get lost in this work and forget about my other responsibilities of my life. That timer allows you to really focus in on the task at hand and then come out of it. Take a little break, and then you can repeat that process. So I hope this video was helpful. Be sure to subscribe for more videos like this.